my girlfriend and I, well, I say girlfriend, but my previous girlfriend and I broke it up now for about almost a week and a half, I think. And well, it's definitely come with its challenges. Like we're still living in the same place. So all of the like patterns and mind moments that come up when we were together are still coming up, even though we're not together. So like, if she pulls up to the driveway or, I hear the door open to the house, those were like, in the past, they were signals to like greet her or to like say hi or, and now we're being more kind of to ourselves. It's interesting though. There's been at some point it just got really bad and I was like, okay, I got to turn this around. Like if I don't turn this around, we know where this is going. So, I basically just, I just started practicing more, and being kind of like gently rigorous about where my mind goes and where it doesn't go. And that's been awesome. And like, I've been able to start seeing that these moments of, craving or, like I want to be with her or I want her attention that, at first those thoughts were just really hard to even see, but now I've started to make more space for them and it's kind of easier to even just have them be there and still feel peace, because it's like if it's interesting, like, how we like throw out unwholesome thoughts, right? So, or relax out of them. And I was thinking, well, I'm starting to crave not wanting to have these thoughts.
Yeah.
So the practice, I saw like a moment where it became like the practice was a problem, or at least I was making it a problem. So then I was like, well, wait, okay, well then there's really nothing wrong. The thoughts can be there too. That's fine. And then the peace doesn't, it doesn't falter, which is nice. The what I wanted to talk to you guys about is, I've had kind of like the runaround with this relationship. Like we've tried this multiple times. We've broken up, gotten back together twice. Um, well, yeah, kinda. And it's interesting that the more and more we take space from each other, I've noticed that all of these aspects that were unwholesome in the relationship, I'm seeing a great portion of them having to do with my own stuff. So, like if she goes to the bar and she's like dressed all cute, when we were together, I would think, oh man, like there's a guy that's going to approach her, or I'm like afraid of that, or whatever. Well, those thoughts are still going on, even though we're not together. And it's like, well, wait a minute, that's really interesting. Here we are, not together. The mind doesn't know the difference. So I just realized, like, all right, I need to face some of this stuff. And so as I've been facing more of that, I've been seeing this like possibility for a new view of her to emerge. That what's been there this entire time has been my mix, like the mix of my stuff on top of that view, so I can't see her purely. And so it's interesting, right? Because there's like all of these things that I don't know, like she might complain, right? She might complain often. Well, we're not together right now, so I don't listen to her like I did before. So I don't have her around complaining. But now I'm noticing I want to be with her. I want to spend more time with her. And is it possible that there is just this, once this kind of peace starts developing more and more and more, and you start making peace with these unwholesome aspects of yourself, and you start realizing that they were a contributor to the relationship, that whatever that person does or doesn't do that might be quote unquote unwholesome becomes kind of less of a significant thing. And there's just like a real pure possibility of like, oh, okay, I could just take a step back and I could actually like love her as she is. And it doesn't have to doesn't have to shape my piece, or now of course there's also that conflict of like functionality, right? Like if you're with someone that's complaining often, or sabotages themselves, that's going to be difficult in terms of like a partnership, right? If you have someone that's kind of more you know trying to go upstream. um so I just kind of wanted to like see what your guys' thoughts were about that. I guess the question is, if you are seeing these things within yourself like I am, and you see there were these reasons for why you didn't want to be with someone before, but you're seeing all these things in yourself that are opening up this new view, how can I kind of trust like what's right, like what's right here, not like the right answer, but
Mm-hmm.
like what's actually wholesome, and what is best for me. I don't want to just go based on my feelings of like, oh, I want to be with her, so be with her, and then all this stuff happens that's wrong again, or a problem again. Obviously, I think what I've realized is that we do need to take time apart.
Mm-hmm.
It's this time apart that is allowing for all this to happen. So we got to keep doing this. Like that's evidence of like, okay, this is good data. These are great results. Let's keep taking space. Um, but you know, we have this lease for like 6 months. We've considered the possibility in the past of like maybe just going out on dates and stuff, but not moving in together after this. What do you guys think in terms of you know you have this old view, you have this new view? How do I know which one to trust? How do I know I'm not just going to be basically settling, or kind of pulling the wool over my eyes, right? It's kind of long-winded, but I
Yeah.
needed to say it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think continuing to just approach it from kind of that investigation, but also like the friendship aspect, right? And so coming from a place of friendship and really seeing like, yeah, you know what? How can you be, good friends with yourself and good friends with her? And part of that is understanding, hey, we do need a little bit of, space, and that can be quite beneficial, right? And I think too, like maybe throwing out any strong solidified like expectations of like how this will go one way or another way, right? Like either strongly for it or against it, and
Mhm.
just being like, okay, but we'll investigate as time goes on, because again, both of
True.
you are subject to change, right? And
Right.
various different things. But I think it's really good that like you're seeing too, like no, the noticing of like the thoughts of like, oh, I don't want to have this thought or whatever, when it comes to like changing them and removing them and all that stuff, and just being like, oh wait, no. And because that stuff, yeah, it's going to be natural that those feelings are going to arise, that they're going to come up. So it's just like, okay, can we change this to like a healthy sort of, place, to a wholesome sort of place? But yeah, discerning that does, it's like, a moment to moment thing of being able to
Mhm.
recognize, okay, what is wholesome here and now, and in terms of, the situation. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
That sounds like some really great practice. Like
Mm-hmm.
as you ask the question, how do you know what's wholesome, what's not, and it can only come to you in the moment. You will
Mhm.
not know from this perspective right now, as if you're not with her and you're not doing something together. She doesn't like give you any feedback, so you will not have any dukkha. So you will come from this clean slate perspective of you can see yourself very clearly. The question comes, can you
Mm.
see yourself clearly when you're in relationship with that people? Because as
Mhm.
we talked about, like practicing in isolation,
Mhm.
it's like it's super, it tends to become easier and easier. But then when we go out in the world, the relationship with people, with objects, is we start getting overwhelmed by the
Mhm.
information, and then we can really lose the track of our thoughts and lose the track of dukkha. So you will only know if you're hanging out and you're able to maintain this new view, the things you learned in your isolation. If you're able to take that now to the relationship, then it can really, really like grow into something for you.
Okay.
That's how I say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm in a relationship as well, so I see that as well. It's a lot of time. A lot of time you need to like give yourself that space to see like, oh wait, that's just me being like a little bitch, or that's just me being, you know, like you see yourself generating this like dukkha about other person, and it's really physical. Like anything physical outside of yourself doesn't have that much effect on you. How you feel, how you see that person, you can see them clearly as like they're complaining. But that's all it is. Like, how many times have you complained? How many times have I like complained? And we're just judging them based on this new view that we're not complaining right now. But
for sure.
everyone's human,
right?
So that space, that if you're able to create that space for them to complain, and then you're really getting somewhere, because now you're taking your practice and you're actually applying it in relationship with people. If you're staying calm, if you're listening, if you're able to see that, oh, they're just having a bad day or having a bad moment. That's how I see it. Yeah. And it can be difficult. It's not like 100% ratio, even in my life.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. That was really good.
Appreciate it. But it sounds like you get a lot of great insight, which is for you.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah, and it's crazy, right? Like there's just, man, I don't know, like okay, and like what's strange is all like this new view of her is opening up, right? But we've decided to not be together right now. So there's like this, oh, wait, come to me. Like let's go on a walk. Like let's go do something fun. And just knowing, right, like that, I mean, I don't want to say that that's not a possibility, but that is kind of what it is. You know, we've decided to like create that boundary and take space. It's just sometimes challenging to and confusing, right? To know like, is this interest in, you know, wanting to spend time with her, is that coming from like a cool piece, like a non-attached piece, or is that coming from like attachment and desire and all of the same issues that we basically were dealing with when we were in the relationship? So yeah.
Well, you got new toys, so you can play with them every time you go out. Now you have some
Yes.
new things that you've been practicing with, so you can see them now. As if you can see them in while you're by yourself, you can see them in relationship to it as well. It's just a matter of question: can you hold on to that attitude and continue seeing them as they arise while you're in a relationship with that? Yeah.
Right. Right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Also, welcome there, Caleb and Robert.
Yeah, welcome, guys.
Yeah, what's up?
Glad to be here. Figured I'd join in on the UK Sangha just to see what was up.
Yeah, not purely UK, as you can tell. Like,
oh yeah, we've infested us dirty Americans.
Yeah, it's just a time zone thing. So.
Do you know what time the US Sangha, if there is one, usually goes up on Skype?
That one I believe is like, it's like 10 p.m. like Eastern Standard Time now. Yeah. On Fridays, so.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I work then, so I cannot attend to that, but I'm free at this hour.
Yeah. There's always like the one, even there's one on Sunday, but I think that for the US that might be quite late. That might be like 11 o'clock. No, like 12 at night. Because
it's
UK time is like 10 a.m.
Yeah, the one on Sundays is like 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So sometimes I'll make that one.
That's like right when I get off work.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
So yeah, normally Dhammarato's in that one, so.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Have a little chat.
How are you, Robert? I heard you had a good day.
Yeah, really good.
Oh yeah, Robert, that's awesome. Good job, man.
Was there anything y'all in particular came together to talk about today? Like, was there a purpose, or was it just sort of the general hangout?
just general hangout.
Yeah.
Cool,
If you want to share something, it's
Yeah.
free to.
Well, I was just wondering, and I asked this question on the Dhamma Dudes Discord already, but what's the best place to put your awareness when you meditate? Because I noticed that I can either let it flow free and do whatever it wants, or I can choose an object of concentration and just sit it on that, and it'll branch out from that to other objects. Does that make sense? I'm not the best at explaining stuff, but I'm just
Oh,
trying
No,
to
that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah.
Attention. You can have like. Oh, go ahead, DJ.
Oh, yeah, no, you can go ahead there, Robert.
Sure. Okay. You can have like a center of attention and then like a peripheral attention that's bigger.
That's for sure. That's for sure. That's even true just for our vision. Like we've got the periphery and the pupil vision with the center.
Yeah, that's true. There's quite a bit of a relation there almost with the way that the awareness sort of functions, yeah. With like the center and then the peripheral. But yeah, I think I kind of responded a bit to that one. But yeah, for like the Anapanasati practice, the main thing with the breath, right, is it is like that anchor for sati. So the main thing is just to know, like, okay, this is a long, in breath, or this is a long out breath. And so I think in terms of like the awareness, we can be quite playful with it in that regard. It's really just noticing like, okay, on that in breath and on that out breath, because that gives us an anchor for sati, remembering to pay attention to what's going on here and now. But again, that's also applying the other aspects too, right? So the viewing as well as the effort. So we're now discerning, okay, is this thought that's coming in wholesome or unwholesome? And then we're going to change that thought to a wholesome thought and then sustain those wholesome thoughts, right? But the breath, that we're coming back to that as an anchor. Plus, it's really nice for that stability, for that grounding. Taking the long breaths really helps to oxygenate the body and is kind of, again, it's wholesome in its own right as well, because you have to be here now in order to discern. Is this long? Is this short? You're not going to be thinking about the breath from last Tuesday. It's this breath right here, right now. So yeah,
but I guess I can add on that and try to explain like what how I see it in the concept. So for example, awareness, you're aware of everything. You're aware that everything is surrounding you at all times as you're calming yourself down. We can use like for example, water cup as an example. If your awareness shifts to I want to have a sip of water, but the water is not in your peripheral awareness, then you're gonna go get it. It's the same with like awareness. Where awareness tends to move on to is the object that you're needing to focus. So for example, if you're seeing the thought come up that is unsatisfying, so you're gonna move awareness towards that. If everything is okay, then there's no need for awareness to be anywhere. There's no need for it to reach and cling onto a cup or an object or anything else. You can just sit and relax in it. That's how I kind of see it. It just sits and melts into everything. It comes out in relation if there's an object to focus on. And as DJ explained in Anapanasati, we're using breath. And then from breath, we can see if there's any thoughts. We can see if there's any tension in the body. And we can move with awareness through that. And then if there's none of that, we just allow awareness to be. We don't need to make any rules for that one meditation session where it's like, oh, okay, this is what's been said, so I'm gonna focus my awareness on this object, or I'm gonna just do this. Just it's like a game. You play with it. You see where it needs to go, and you allow it. Yeah, that's how I.
Well, I've noticed that even when trying to focus on the breath, it might be easy for a few minutes, but then your attention sort of starts to stutter a little bit, and it will switch from objects of interest out of boredom. At least that's just me. I've noticed that if you even allow your mind to do that, you can also let go of that in and of itself. And so without even having to note, you're also aware of the breath and the mental continuum.
Yeah, so you brought awareness towards that object that came up. The object that came up is like, oh, it's hard to maintain awareness on the breath. So you brought awareness onto that thought. And now you're saying, oh, wait, I can actually maintain my breath and think at the same time while I'm thinking this thing. and then you completely diluted that, and then you can say, wait, I don't even need necessarily these thoughts or the breath in order to maintain awareness, and you melt back into it. So you just explained exactly what I was trying to explain, is like, as it arises, you play with it as it arises. That's the only way I can actually conceptualize from my own language, is as it arises, you just play with it wherever you feel it fits. Yeah.
I think another wonderful thing to bring up here too is like, say when a hindrance or whatever does arise, like say boredom, right, is also just the spotting of it, right, is actually doing the correct sort of practice, right? And so having that moment where you spot it and then having that congratulations, like this is why sometimes using a small phrase or something like aha, I see you, can be quite lovely. It's like you're playing a game, right? And as you spot it, it's like, wow, this was spotted. And then you can just return back to enjoying the breath. I think that's the other thing too, right? Is it's also taking the time to really enjoy the breath as well with some of these long breaths, like really enjoying the sensations, and that just this breath right now is enough as well. So coming back to the content, to the satisfaction, that just this one right now is enough. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that really does bring you right to the moment. It took me many years to realize that just thinking about the past or planning for the future can be useful in moderation, but it's sort of a waste of time to an extent, because all your power is here in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And it is often like, like just a little bit here and there can be helpful, but often it is overdone and it's not very beneficial. So it's like we can just come back to here and now with the breath and just enjoy this and be satisfied, content, at ease. And bringing in again with when the hindrances are spotted, but regardless, is actually cultivating this feeling of success, of like, yeah, this is successful. Just being here, taking these long breaths, this is successful enough. And really, just basking in that. Because that builds the confidence, and the confidence loops back to the satisfaction, and it's just this beautiful thing that just keeps rolling. And then even when thoughts come up of boredom, it's like, oh yeah, that's cool, whoa, we spotted boredom, great, and then just keep on rolling.
It's weird though, because when it happens to me, it's not like I think to myself, oh, I'm bored. It's more so that I become agitated to a small extent, and then my attention gets loose.
Yeah, it's like sometimes it can be quite like almost subtle in a sense. It's not like, oh, I'm bored, or this. It's just the subtle things, and then it kind of has gone off. Yeah.
There's many forms of thoughts. Like it's not usually, it can be not verbal, it can be like imagery, it can be like super fast. That's why like we've been talking, I think months ago, about like the reaction time. As reaction time goes up, you're able to spot them more and more faster. Even these like more subtle ones, is like the little tensions in the body. You can spot a little tension, like a little tension in my shoulder to tell me that I'm bored, like, oh, I need to move my body. Things like that. It seems to be like there's a lot to it that unveils itself once you start like really, really paying attention and really just melting yourself down.
So how has meditation in your daily practice had, I know a lot of people say, oh, that meditation is the benefit, but what benefits that are tangential to the time spent meditating have you experienced? Like, are you just calmer for a few hours afterwards, or do you realize, or do you extract some of that insight you gain in the meditative state and bring that into your daily awareness? I'm really curious about that from people's first person perspectives.
For me personally, I used to meditate because of the suffering, just to eliminate the suffering, and then it transitioned into like insight and getting like a lot of insight. I feel like there's like a little pendulum that swings back and forth. So we tend to go over the same things until we can connect the dots. And usually the meditation tends to be that little isolation practice that we can see ourselves very clearly without the noise of the world. So that is very needed in the beginning. But as you progress, you can see the meditation in every daily tasks, especially in relationships to other people, because that's when we need it the most, is dealing with the world. So meditation, as for me, I rarely sit down. I'll have like my little relaxing breaks if I'm like on a lunch break, or if I'm just waking up. I'll use that time wisely and set myself like, just see what's going on, just investigate. Am I satisfied? I'm satisfied. I don't really need to get myself into meditative state because I'm already there. But if I'm not, then maybe I will put a bit more effort, like take a breath, relax, see what's there. That's at least my personal experience. I think I had these periods previously where I lay off like sitting on a pillow for a long time, and then I go back when I really enjoy it, but not out of suffering anymore, where I'm like super suffering, and I just go meditate for hours and hours, just thinking that's gonna help me to avoid the responsibility of taking the dukkha out right now, right here. What about you?
Yeah.
I'm actually very unexperienced when it comes to meditating. I mean, I've had sort of a minor interest in mindfulness in Buddhism, probably for the past like 4 or 5 years, and I've had a lifelong interest in Eastern religions and spiritual practices in general. But only recently, probably in the past, say, couple months, have I tried to start actually sitting and reading and getting into stuff. And I've realized pretty quickly that not that I need like specific assistance in order to get it done, because really you're just sitting, you're breathing, you're experiencing like anybody else, right? But I've noticed that a lot of assistance comes from people who have already done the work and are able to speak about it, consider your thoughts, and sort of bounce back and forth with you, you know?
Have you had a call with Dhammarato?
No, I have
No.
not.
I think that's worth like giving a shot in the beginning, because he can really nail you down the practice that we tend to practice, at least in this group. We still do a lot of like different, I'm sure a lot of people do a lot of different type of meditations, but mainly most of us practice like Anapanasati, because we found that, at least I found, I cannot speak for everyone else, but I found that it really connected all the dots from other meditations. Because as other meditations, you said, you sit down, you're experiencing, you're just observing. So that's what would be called the noting method. And at the beginning, as I said, that might be useful, but over time you tend to note things that are not necessarily so useful for you, and then they tend to cling on for the rest of the day or for the rest of the months, and then you don't know how to really deal with them. And that's where like dark night of the soul comes, or
Really?
really deep depressive states come. It's just because you're observing all this new information and you don't really know how to process it. But with Anapanasati, it kind of it makes it easy, because it really does. It just instantaneously, you note, and you know what to do with it. You know if it's wholesome. If it's not wholesome, then there's no need for it to stay. You know how to throw it out. So essentially, you're practicing taking out the trash and keeping
I
all
see.
the goodies.
I see. Makes
Yeah,
sense. I mean, when you meditate, you act while also experiencing like the conscious states that you're stuck in at that moment, or lucky to be in, depending on your perspective. Um, you act sort of as like a momentary filter, right? Like what you just said with taking out the trash. But I thought one of the important things about the noting style meditations was to note the impermanence and cessation of these individual thoughts, right? So if you're noting and they're cessating, what's the problem with them staying? Or like how do they stay, I should say?
The clinging can come onto some deeper suffering. For example, like there is some things we might not notice, that, like, for example, you mentioned boredom. So sometimes we will not notice that boredom, and that boredom will bring certain actions that will create a lot of suffering. Like maybe you will go out and like I don't know, spend all your money on like on the groceries, on things that you really didn't want to buy, or maybe you will just be agitated and like mindlessly scroll through the internet for hours and hours. There's nothing wrong with that, but we're trying to notice these things and show them out without actually causing ourselves harm. And as you said, noting that is correct, because originally when you note something, you see the impermanence of it, and you see that there's no point clinging to it anyway, because it's gonna pass, right? Even if it's an unwholesome thing or a wholesome thing, it's gonna pass either way. But it tends to be harder to do. I used to think like that was the noting method, but over time, like the dukkha kind of built up, and it was harder and harder to see things of impermanence, especially if you build up identity around spiritual practices. And if you read into other people's teachings, and that dark night of the soul is a must, everybody goes through this, you have to suffer, you have to really work really hard, then you buy into that identity, and it becomes really hard to let go. And that's how like we start like generating a lot of like more dukkha.
Isn't that kind of ironic? People going into spirituality, finding themselves a new identity rather than just getting rid of the first one, you know?
Yes. Replacing a suit.
I thought that one of the main points of spiritual practice was just to sort of throw off the robes and realize that the internal is empty, you know? And I'm not even like a seasoned meditator or reader or Sutta instructor or anything like that. And a lot of these things just seem kind of like obvious to understand, but almost impossible to actually operate, you know? Like they make sense on the face value, but when you start looking in and trying to see the intentions and the experiences of the people who have been through these things, they're pretty not only transformative, but kind of radical compared to the way that the rest of humans operate, you know? Or the rest of us, I should say.
Yeah, and I believe operating out of like seeing of like no self can bring a lot of like initial shock for somebody who hasn't built up to it, because it can leave like, oh, so anything I do doesn't matter. Like I can just go and like do whatever I want, or I can get into a depressive state and not want to get out of the bed because, hey, I don't really have to meditate. I already don't exist, you know?
I always thought that no self meant that at the core there was nothing like it. In, you know how there's an ellipsis that's 3 dots? Well, imagine 4 dots and everything's in balance. And in the center is the gap, right? Where there's just nothing there. So even if your core is empty, that doesn't mean your edges stop hurting. You know, you're still just as incarnate as anybody else, you know? But what we realize when, at least this is what I've been trying to do more and more every day, is when we realize that it's empty at our core, nothing can get to you, truly. But that bravery of being able to say that versus the bravery of jumping into the lion's mouth is leagues apart. But I really don't know how to get there. Maybe it's not, but I don't know.
Well, and it's also like the remembering aspect, right, of that. So there can be these insights into the nature of self or what have you, even impermanence, but then, you know, one forgets. So this is why the sati, the mindfulness, is so essential, because that's the remembering, and that's remembering to pay attention to what's going on here and now. But with that is remembering this method, right? And remembering, you know, all that's kind of come. I mean, but also that's just paying attention to what's going on in reality as it is. Like, it's just, oh, wait, things are changing, you know, and you can't spot a self like essence, which is permanent. Like, where does this actually come from? It's all, you know, interbeing. It's all interdependent on the other sort of chains, like the object and, you know, what's seeing the object, they are, right? They interconnect and all that stuff. But yeah, it's the remembering. It's the can you remember this, you know, when you're in the middle of work, you know, if you have an angry customer, you know, can you remember that? So, you know, is that sati there for you? And that's why objects like, you know, training with the breath, and that's very much it. It is a training, right? It's developing these skills of being able to remember. And that's why the breath is so great. It's just like, oh, okay, we have a hit of sati, you know, on the in-breath and on the out-breath, and we remember. But also, too, I think what's thinking about the Anapanasati and just what meditation, I think, you know, has been so beneficial for me, too, is the mental sort of stability. It is that mental stability. It is that clarity. And it is also just a joy. Oh, welcome, Rick.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I was just talking to Caleb here about some of the benefits of Anapanasati and all that. But yeah, it is a way to tap into a very reliable satisfaction, a very reliable sense of joy and ease. Like that's kind of the beauty of it as well. So, and part of that is with the Anapanasati, it really is like the whole package of cultivating these skills, cultivating the feeling of success, cultivating the feeling of satisfaction and relaxation, the ability to relax the body and the mind, and yeah, really like talk yourself into feeling good. So part of the practice is actually playing around a bit in the start with the verbal thoughts. So actually playing a bit with the verbal thoughts can be quite helpful, because it does help to I think keep one sort of grounded as well. So often we get ahead of ourselves and we're like, oh yeah, we want to drop away all the verbal thoughts. We just want to hit it. We want to get into that second jhana or whatever, if you're familiar with that. That's a thing. But actually just sticking with like the first sort of jhana, which are you familiar with the jhana, Caleb?
I have read up a little bit about the jhanas factors or jhana states. I understand that it goes sort of from a feeling of like equanimity all the way up to the formless realms, but I don't really know how those experiences are.
Okay, yeah. So for this, like the primary thing is that the first one is good enough. Okay, so this is what happens: is a lot of the time folks will be like, "Oh man, we got to jump all the way to formless realms."
Well, how could you expect yourself to get there?
Yeah, yeah. So
I mean, I had an experience once where excuse me if this is sort of brusque or too much to say. I used to be a user of psychedelics back in my college and high school years, and I once took a dose and completely disintegrated. Just everything was gone. I was in my bed. I knew I was at home in my bed, but the only thing in my awareness was just me. So no eyes, no ears, no mouth, no nose, no mind even, almost. Like this was a mind under the mind. And it was freaky because I didn't even know that was possible. And I talked to some people about it, and they were supposedly long-standing and practiced Buddhists. And they say that it's like a Maya version of nirvana itself, like some sort of illusion that says, hey, you're here. But for me, it was genuinely a positive thing that opened me up to new spiritual horizons, because it showed me, hey, it's not just the meat box. You also have that little flame in here to work with.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Like, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like, okay, cool. The thing though still is, I think what is helpful, for a helpful reminder, is just to not get caught up in any particular experience and come back to what's going on here and now. And in terms too of satisfaction, right? In terms of
it didn't like make me happy or anything. It was just weird.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just it's a cool thing. But what I was saying with the jhana, or like the first jhana, is actually it's helpful to have some parameters and kind of what we're talking about here. And so there are some ingredients. And so this is primarily the removal of the hindrances, right? So when the mind is clear from the hindrances, which is like anger, craving, craving, desire,
greed.
anger, craving,
greed.
Wait, how many jhanas are there? I always thought there were 8, but now I'm seeing one that says it's number 9, called cessation.
Well, yeah, I mean, primarily, we're just kind of concerned with the 4. Just first.
I'm sorry, that was a little bit off base. Let's keep it to delightful sensations for now.
Yeah. So anyway, I was just going over the hindrances, the different ones,
Right.
but primarily it's the unwholesome thoughts. You're in craving, you're in a sense of lack, right? It's unwhole because it's like, okay, I need something. I'm not, satisfied right now. So it's coming back to a state of like, okay, whole, complete with just the breath, like just this breath is enough, right? You don't want anything. There isn't that craving. Or sometimes, like, again, another hindrance as I was going through them could be drowsiness, right? And so that would be like, oh man, I really need to go to sleep. Or there's that sort of, that thing of like, I'm really tired. I can't do this. I can't practice the meditation right now, right? So that could be a hindrance to the meditation. Or restlessness, going this way or that way and not being able to really just come back and relax with the breath and enjoy that. Or doubt's a big one, right? So this can't work. I can't be, happy with just this breath. This isn't the correct practice. I'm not doing this right. I'm terrible at meditation, right? And so whenever these things are spotted, again, it's coming back and just spotting them and being, congratulatory with them and being like, yeah, this is fire. And really cultivating that ability to be like, yes, I've won the Super Bowl. Because again, part of this is understanding, yes, this is partially perception. This is partially made up. We can feel as good as we want to if we train ourselves to. And so we can feel like, yeah, this is better than winning the Super Bowl. This is like being able to change our mind, being able to spot these hindrances. This is all the way. And this is the cultivation of piti, right? And so piti, which is this feeling of success, this feeling of confidence, is actually one of the jhana factors. So for the first jhana, piti is one of the elements. So we've covered a couple of them here. One of them is the removal of the hindrances, and then there's the piti. And once again, the removal of the hindrances, when the hindrances come up, because what can happen is it can be like, oh man, we finally got into a good state. This is wonderful. And then a hindrance comes up and it's like, oh no, I'm out of my good state. No, the thing is to turn them against themselves. Now those are like little candies. It's like, oh yes, we spot a hindrance. Awesome. Right back on the train, right? So it's not even like you ever fell off the horse. You just keep on riding this thing. Then, right, with that is also that feeling of satisfaction, right? So this is the sukha. This is another jhana factor, and this is the feeling of satisfaction, which comes again from this is enough. This is contentment. This is good. We're satisfied, right? And at ease and secure and like, yeah. Oh yeah, did you?
Yeah, I had something to add real quick.
Yeah.
Would it be suffice to say that it's not that we are getting off the horse when we meditate? It's more so that when we meditate, we realize we never get off the horse unless we learn to calm ourselves down and sort of untie ourselves from the harness, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I realized that even in states of sleep, you're still there. But it's almost like the main, at least what I've been seeing in my journeys through Dharma, has been the right concentration and right mindfulness, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. It's almost like you have to center yourself in order to actually get anywhere in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's returning, I suppose, to the mindfulness, right? And that being remembering to pay attention to what's going on here
Like,
and now.
I'm not saying you can't be like not mindful, but it's almost to say that your mind will still always have, even in states of unconsciousness, to an extent, there will still be phenomena there. It's just that it's up upon ourselves whether or not we allow that in or recognize it. I've had certain experiences where I have gone to sleep, but not fully gone to sleep, where it was almost like that void that I was talking about before, where you are awake while also dormant. But I don't know if that's something that is cultivated at all in these practices. Like just being aware 24/7, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and this is the thing, right? Is it's not about being aware 24/7 because that is a concept, right? It is
Okay.
about being aware when we remember here and now, because often the problem is that we get into mindfulness, we get into meditation, and then we want to do meditation all the time. And that is a form of craving, right? Rather than just being content with when it happens here and now. And so we train ourselves to remember. It's like, oh man, I remembered right now. This is wonderful. And what this does is actually also enforce a bit more of a positive sort of feedback loop. So we're not beating ourselves up because we set ourselves a standard of you should be meditating. Like, this is a rule. You need to meditate and you need to remember to be mindful. It's like, no, I remembered to be mindful. Isn't this wonderful? I can just be happy right now. And like, that's sort of the thing of bringing it back to that, you know, and having it be easy. I mean, the other thing too, and part of being able to, I think, sustain and come back to a very reliable, you know, sense of success, of ease, of comfort, is throwing out some of those expectations and being satisfied with what's going on here and now, right? So like that's really it. So having, again, like attaching to any particular past experience or wanting a future experience can diminish the experience that is happening in this present moment. And so that's part of it, right? I mean, it comes back, a lot of it, if you to I don't know, are you familiar with the Four Noble Truths?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it primarily comes back to, you know, that you know, there is the dukkha, there's the dissatisfaction, there's the cause, right? And the cause is the craving, right? The cause is that, and it makes sense. Can you be thirsty and satisfied at the exact same time? And I mean, you might be able to shift really quickly between these two, but you're not going to be thirsty, you know, and quenched at the same time, right? It's going to shift. So we're learning how to be quenched here, how to be reliably quenched. So like that's sort of the thing with that. So it's really looking into those Four Noble Truths, and I covered, you know, the first two there, but then there is the cessation, right, of the dukkha, right, and that's it, coming back to being quenched, coming back to being, you know, satisfied. And that's the thing too, is I think often it is seen as this long drawn out thing. Again, getting to the fourth noble truth here, the path, which here I think we like to refer to it a bit more sometimes as a method, that this isn't a long arduous path that we need to travel, but it is something, this method, to come back to this satisfaction, to this ease, to this comfort right now. So that can be a very helpful thing as well. So it's realizing that third noble truth over and over and over again. That's part of the training as well. And again, it's shortened down to like, what did the Buddha teach? And it's dukkha, dukkha, nirodha. So that's like a very helpful compass, because it can often be that we get really far out there on conceptual things, even when it comes to understandings of, say, non-self and anatta and all that stuff. But it's coming back to like, okay, what is the practical implication of this? And the practical implication is, yeah, when you can eradicate the dukkha, when you can see what dukkha is, when you can understand dissatisfaction and you know its end, it's like, okay, yeah, no, this is some good stuff, you know, not to cling to it, just to be like, wow, this is easy, this is breezy. Yeah, so that's a wonderful compass to return to. Yeah,
that was excellent, DJ. I really like when you got into jhānas, as far as like we're trying to really explain as riding the horse. It's not, it is mindfulness, but it's maintaining that mindfulness into a state of complete relaxation, of not even needing mindfulness at certain point. We're just so satisfied that there's nothing going on and we don't really have to pay attention to anything. It's just super pleasant and enjoyable. And that's what we're practicing here, is just to enjoy our lives, to be happy. And that's I think that's the most important. Everything else just falls apart. Even if you look at any of your own experiences, or I looked at my own experiences, eventually you see there's nothing to them. They come, they pass, and that's it. They arise and they disappear in the impermanence of the things, as you mentioned, even with experiences, even with states, even with everything.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're not reliable. So where can we find this reliable satisfaction, right? It's not going to be found in these external like objects which arise and cease. But we can find it right here and right now if we remember.
Are you saying that it's an internal object of some sort? Or is it like beyond internal or external, I guess?
Yeah, I would say beyond internal or, external, but yet containing both, That might be a little bit more on the philosophical aspect of it, even. It's just, it is what it is.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I used to be a more of a philosophical type person, but really what I was doing was searching for that empirical experience of piti, I guess, at this point. And once I started meditating even a little bit and experiencing pleasant sensations from that, that really opened up my eyes to the possibilities of not only self-control, self-awareness, but self-appreciation that's not cherishing or self-desire, something that's like non-attached but still very much beneficial.
I think you'll get a good kick out of talking to Dhammarato for sure.
He's probably just gonna shred apart anything that I say usually because it's not even from a negative perspective. It's just what he's gonna say is gonna transcend it to the point where what I was saying is almost like deprecated immediately. But that's what I want, not what I would be defensive against. Like I'm looking for the mud to be washed off my eyes, not like.
You know what? It's a good idea not to go in with any expectations.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the best advice anyone can give you when you're trying to talk with someone like that, because it's really just best to just be very honest and very receptive. That's it. And beyond that, you'll it'll be a great time. But yeah, don't sweat the expectations.
Yeah, I just know that at least the way where I try to explain things about my experiences, I'll use very specific and kind of verbiage words in a way that might come off as philosophical, but what I'm trying to say is very simple,
There'll be a mutual understanding in that usually. I think that's the benefit I got out of my first call. I think is just connecting the language, especially as we're using these ancient languages which describe certain states, and even nowadays the Western world, which are using the mindfulness, we're using a lot of I think false language that have really strong terms like nirvana, etc., that we don't really understand that well. And when you meet someone who been there, done that, who studied all these words and can pinpoint you to a way in a concept you can conceptualize yourself into what it means for you, it's been very useful. Quiet.
That's nice too, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, quiet's awesome. Sorry, I just had to do a bio break.
I was talking to my friend about the quiet pauses, when you have a conversation with somebody, and most people just blah 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 without taking a break to really navigate themselves in talking to someone. And the uncomfortable pause comes only after 3 seconds. If you pause like I paused right now, then discomfort comes in. But if I pause just for a couple seconds, it's completely normal. And you can give yourself so much space in these moments to take a breath, to relax, to really be there in a conversation. But we tend to miss it so many times. We tend not to be there and just yabble, and thinking that somebody else is going to feel uncomfortable. And even if they do, it doesn't matter. But even if it exists as a rule, we know that it's probably 2 to 3 seconds until that person thinks, oh wait, what's happening? I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, it's a fun object to play with, like just noticing it and being like, no, we don't have to listen to that discomfort. We can just be comfortable. We can come back to that.
So when people talk about insight, does that usually entail an experience of some sort of object in the mind or space around you that, like, how does that work? Is it like an opening or the acquisition of a new idea or some sort of novel experience?
It's like connecting the dots.
Oh, okay.
I would say, like, we were talking like before, like Alex was sharing something. You participated while Alex was sharing about his relationship and etc. And he was taking a break and he was having all this insight, seeing himself in a different light. So that you can almost use that language. You're seeing something that was not there before. It was there before, but you were not seeing it. You brought it to light, and how you brought it to light is by your practice, is by being relaxed and calm and actually looking at things as they are. And once the mind is ready, we call that mind is ready for work, fit for work. And mind is only ready and fit for work when it's relaxed and when it's calm and when it can actually look at things as they are, not with like perceptions or concepts or anything like that, but really, really sharp and relaxed.
Yeah, so this is kind of where I suppose a little bit of the difference from like the noting technique comes in, is that this practice of Anapanasati is much more, while the noting might be referred to as a dry insight kind of practice, we're doing a little bit more of a wet insight, as in we're going to get quenched first, we're going to get satisfied, yeah. And then we can start
insights.
Yeah. But then it's like, okay, yeah, the mind's fit for work, and we got this wonderful water park we can play in, so.
So how would you describe the differences between Anapanasati and, say, a more, I guess, well-known version of meditation like Vipassana? Because Vipassana is an insight meditation, right? But what I'm getting from Anapanasati, it seems to be more of just keeping it almost bare bones, just like the simple noting of the breath and the other mental phenomena. I really don't know.
I think the better distinction would be to distinguish like what we said, like dry insight and then not so dry insight. Wet insight, you would call
Juicy.
it.
Would that dryness
Juicy
versus
insight.
wetness be like emotional content then?
Yeah, partially, I would say, right, is we are going to be, coming from a place of success, a place of satisfaction, right? So we are going to fill up the mind with these things, for starters, and that sort of the thing. And that might calm down even further past that. But it's still, okay, we're coming from this baseline. And then from that place, observing reality as it is. As well. So, the breath again is just an anchor, and like it is coming back, remembering to come back to partake in the practice. But then again, there can be aspects of Vipassana, right? So it's both Vipassana and I suppose a shamatha or whatever, the relaxing meditation. So it's actually kind of both, and they're working together. So like Vipassana is to kind of clearly see, and the shamatha is sort of to relax. So once we've kind of, relaxed, we can really, clear off the looking glass, and then we can see things clearly, right? And so it's from this place of satisfaction that, oh, okay, we can observe reality. We can still see, oh yeah, the breath is changing, right? They're right there. The sensations of the breath are rising and falling. the thoughts are coming and going, if there is thoughts, right? And again, we are putting in right effort here as well. So that is actually bringing about, if we do have verbal thoughts, having those be wholesome verbal thoughts. So with this practice, it is very much like, oh yeah, there's nothing to do, no place to go. Dhammarato likes that one a lot. Or if you want to go, because like I practice quite a bit of the noting, so I do kind of do a little bit of almost a note with it, or a mantra. So on the in-breath, sometimes I'll just be like, breathing in, this is enough. Breathing out long, this is enough. So just to have that anchor. And then maybe after a while of that, just drop it and just experience. And then if the mind starts to wander or whatever in terms of going into unwholesome. So the primary thing too is when it wanders, it's more, is it wholesome or is it unwholesome, right? So that's what we're more concerned about here than even being strongly focused on an object like the breath, right? The main thing is actually to keep it applied and sustained on the wholesome thoughts and or just like the wholesome attention, even, if you will, right? And so that's going to be things that bring us back to contentment, to satisfaction, being okay with just this breath. Or with that too, we can be aware of what's going on in the body. And again, there can still be that investigation into what's going on. I enjoy playing quite a bit in terms of looking into the phenomena as it arises and ceases, or just like that sort of stuff, noticing, what even is this awareness or what have you, and then, picking that apart while still breathing in and breathing out and paying attention and being completely satisfied. Because if comes a thought, perhaps that's like, oh, you really want to get this particular piece, or you don't have this piece of the puzzle yet, you need to get that. If that craving comes up, that's another thing to spot and to see and to let go of and let disperse, right? And just kind of float along as you change back to, oh, everything is okay. So it can be playing in quite a subtle way as well. But again, the primary thing is just to return back to the wholesome, like that's the main thing. And then from there, we can practice the investigation. And once the mind is fit for work.
I think I see what you're saying to a certain extent. I'm struggling to fully grasp what you're saying, because a lot of it probably comes from being in the meditation mode, I guess. And the only way to really firmly grasp what's being said is to actually go out and do it to a certain extent.
On that point about the meditation, what you're calling the meditation mode, one of the sweet things about practice, whether it's this or another method, is how it bleeds into when you're not formally practicing, you're awake to your thoughts, you're awake to your reactions to things and your responses to things. So a lot of times you'll find that it's not only when you're in formal practice that you're experiencing the satisfaction or the fruits of the practice, but it can be moments throughout the day when you remember to be present, and it's good not to make such a distinction between, okay, now I'm sitting, now I'm, trying to have experience the perfection of XYZ, but rather it's all throughout the day. You're like, oh yeah, this tastes fantastic. Let me really, experience this sensation. Or, oh, how interesting that this, the thoughts that this phenomenon caused in me. And let's notice what that's doing. Let's not necessarily grab onto it, but just notice it as it arises and passes away. Again, not meditation mode. This has become like normal mode. but the meditation helps bring that about in a very real way. And then at some point it becomes very blurred and blended, which is pretty sweet actually, because then you are more awake when you're awake.
I think I see what you're saying to a certain extent. I've noticed that in the hours preceding the meditations that I do, for a solid 3 hour span, I still will probably, I'd say I'd probably still feel that calmness unless something perturbs me or I go to sleep, you know?
Right,
But
but it's about noticing that. It's about noticing the perturbed state, recognizing it, and not necessarily trying to push it away, but just recognizing for what it is and that it's temporary, and being satisfied with noticing the temporary nature. And it's funny because as you notice it, it becomes very temporary and then it's gone. Yeah.
I actually noticed that myself, where you don't have to really, like you said, push it away at all. As long as you sort of give it the full weight of your attention, even for a moment, and sort of accept it, then it feels like it's transferred the information to you that it needed to. Because a lot of these perceptions in unwholesome states don't accrue in your mind because there's some sort of mental negativity that's coming after you. It's because in the way that we are processing the sensory data and our mental continuum and all of the experiences around us, these are just the best means available, if that makes sense. Like, oh, if you say if you're fighting somebody and you get scared and, or never mind, that's a terrible analogy. But basically what I'm trying to say is it's only negative because you feel like you can't handle it almost. Like if it's something that would be completely backbreaking to one person, might be completely rejuvenating to somebody else. It all just depends on your perspective. What I've seen with a lot of experienced meditators is they almost have the ability to change their perspective as things arise, which is pretty freeing, I've seen. And that's opened up a large amount of, admittedly, desire in my own experience to start meditating and not achieving, but accepting my life to the point where I don't have to feel the need to achieve anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Caleb, I think like what you were pointing to just there is it's your relationship to whatever phenomena is arising, whatever thoughts or emotions that are arising. That is what is changing in the practice of meditation. And so that's what creates the difference between someone who is suffering over this back-breaking thought and then someone who can look at this back-breaking thought and can realize that their back isn't breaking and everything's okay. And
Right.
that thought it's fine even if it looks like a back-breaking thought. Wow. Oh wow, okay, but I can somehow just let that be.
Right, because you don't identify. You know you're not that thought. You are not that thought. And I think what happens in prior to a lot of practice or in a kind of in a conditioned way is that people attach to it very quickly, and then it becomes more back-breaking, mind-breaking.
Yeah.
But instead you realize, no, I'm not that thought. It's just a thought. It's just a phenomenon. It's just an experience that I'm aware of at this point. And hey, it's cool. It's all cool. Yeah.
What's interesting, Rick, I don't know if you heard, but it's like, I don't know if I told you last week, but my girlfriend, I keep saying that, my previous girlfriend and I broke up last week. And so it's been about a week and a half. And one thing that I've noticed is that when the tendency to like crave her attention or crave even just like memories or reminiscing that goes on about, just images flashing through the head, I basically kind of like objectify that, right, as like craving. Okay, let's relax out of that craving.
Very
Let's come
good.
back into wholesome.
Yeah, fantastic.
But what's interesting is that at some point, it was today that I started seeing that I started seeing a craving to relax out of craving. And
right.
so when I saw that, there was this like that, Caleb, was the back-breaking thought. It was like, wait, I want to practice well, but that's a problem. I'm craving to practice well. So at that point, I basically just was like, oh, okay, well then I got to let that one be there too. I got to make space for that as well and relax out of that one just as much as I'm relaxing out of these images about my previous girlfriend. And
Right.
then it all just, ever since then, you know, it's just been like kind of even sailing, smooth sailing.
It's like even the desire for liberation is a hindrance, right?
Exactly. Right? Exactly. And you get so in touch with this paradox the more and more you come up against it, and you relax out of it. You see that, you know, just doing it over and over again, you're like, well, there is liberation, but it's not going to happen from wanting it. It happens from relaxing out of wanting it. Oh, okay. So I'll just keep doing that.
Oh, it's kind of like putting a horse in a stable front ways with blinders on, and if it can't look around and see behind, it's not going to back out. It's just not going to back out of that stable, right? But it's almost like the relaxation is when the horse finally realizes that there's no other way, and it just slowly walks backwards out, turns around, and is available to the whole environment.
That was really good. Yeah. Yeah, that hit home for sure. Yeah, so it's just amazing, guys. Like, it's amazing. I'm so grateful for the Dhamma. I guess I could just say that, you know, like a year ago, if I had a breakup, man, I would be a total wreck, like just a total mess. And I've felt like a mess here and there, but the mess, the relationship with the mess is what has changed and allowed me to kind of go through this more wholesomely. I'm just like, it's amazing what I'm doing. I am living with my previous girlfriend. We still have a lease for 6 months, and we're being like friendly. We're being good friends. We're being honest with each other. You know, I mean, it's just incredible. It's incredible.
Handling like a lion.
Exactly.
Sound
Yeah.
like a lion.
Yeah. Dhammarato's voice comes into my head from time to time, like, I can handle this.
This is like a small question I have that's probably not like big deal. But when Dhammarato was a monk in the Thai forest tradition under I think it was Ajahn Po, right? Did he ever get far enough in their tradition to be given like the permission to teach from his guru or whatever that is? I think there's like a certain level where it's like if you're below that as a monk, you're not recommended to teach, but then once you hit above that, you almost have to.
I have no idea about that.
Okay.
I believe that Ajahn Po.
I mean, it's not
I think
important to me, but
yeah,
I just was curious.
Yeah, I believe that Ajahn Po actually was the one who said to Dhammarato, like he told him to go and teach the way he is online, like with like one-on-one.
Perfect.
If I'm remembering correctly, yeah.
Yeah, I heard that.
That's pretty cool.
The whole permission thing from like an association isn't really important to me, but the blessing of a guru is, just from my own spiritual perspective.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. You have two teachers of the Dhamma, and like one of them is supporting the other and going out to teach. Like, that just like kind of double backs what Dhammarato has learned.
Yeah, and I've listened to what Dhammarato's been saying, and from my own individual level of experience, I can just vouch for what he's saying. I mean, it just all makes sense on the face of it, you know? And when it makes sense on the face of it, it's going to make even more sense when you get deep into it. It's kind of like peering over a ledge and like the Grand Canyon almost. It's like, well, the ledge is nice, but there's all that space down there if you're ready.
I really like this analogy. I saw this Dhamma dude's new videos, like short videos released, and I think Eric was talking to Dhammarato about how everyone is a teacher. We all have all the views at all times. We have an ordinary view and we have a noble view. And all people transition through them throughout days, months, throughout cycles. We all have the ability to teach. It just matters, can we get ourselves relaxed into that state of being completely relaxed and seeing things how they are. And that's the benefit I kind of get from Sangha, is because we all get nice and relaxed in this chat, and we all can teach each other. And in a essence, if somebody needs a little reminder, or if somebody needs a good congratulations, it's truly a fascinating thing.
Yeah, that definitely, Alex. You deserve quite a bit of congratulations for handling your shit, man. Good job.
Aw, thanks, guys.
Not only that, I gotta say, Alex's videos are probably the most interesting amount of dukkha I ever seen. It generated
Yeah, they're raw.
that amount of time. It's just a month and a half, and you were smashing it back and forth. It was quite impressive.
Yeah, someone needs to do a time lapse edit of some of clips for 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes up into the present. The before and after kind of deal.
Honestly,
I took my photo
you guys
every day for 10 years.
Yeah, I took my photo every day for 1 month. You guys are inspiring me to actually go back and check the videos, because yeah, I probably would be surprised to look at myself.
And you miss a lot of things. You'll notice that you missed a lot of things that you were being communicated to, because you were functioning out of unwholesome states in most of those videos.
For sure. For sure.
So this is gonna sound kind of like a pretty basic question, but I'm just gonna ask it anyways. What would you all say the main differences between mindfulness and self-help? Say somebody wants to read the suttas instead of reading Getting Off Your Butt and Being Happy for Dummies, What's the real?
One's an intellectual pursuit, and it's more of in a way, it's almost it's almost ego stroking in a way.
Oh, okay.
Mindful, yeah. And mindfulness is about the experiencing the present moment, and not worrying about your preconceptions. So one's an experience, and the other is okay. Here's how to feel better about your ego.
Yeah.
I mean, that may be oversimplifying it a bit, an entire.
No, you're pointing to the core of it, I think.
An entire field of books, but yeah, that's and presentations, and I don't know, but I'm not very enamored with that. I think a lot of it is scammy.
For sure.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I think they're not even, I mean, they're they're I don't know, they're apples and rotted apples.
Yeah, the only thing I really knew was self-help is just somebody saying you can do it sort of emptily to everybody, sort of false claims. But the Dhamma is how to do it step by step. It makes there's no room for interpretation. It's,
the Dhamma
if you do
is
this,
doing
this will
it.
happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but the Dhamma is actually doing it. One is conceptualizing. One can read the Dhamma and actually not practice it, and just say recitate all these things, and one can understand Dhamma and actually put it to practice. That's what we're actually talking about it here. Just getting your hands dirty, investigating in yourself, taking responsibility in your own way.
Right. And even in practice, one can sit for hours and hours and hours and get nowhere. It's not like people sitting at
I love getting nowhere.
That's
not a bad thing, getting nowhere. We're already nowhere.
That sounds like quite a successful sit.
I'm down with that. Let's do that. Get nowhere. The goal is goal.
Reminds me of the gateless gate. Sorry, a lot of my experience with Buddhism has come from Vajrayana and other Mahayana style texts. So I don't want to say I'm like corrupted or anything, but a lot of it is sort of intellectual, like you said. But
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it,
you throw out these categories. Throw them out, man. Throw out
Yeah.
these categories. They're they're great to get you interested maybe into the practice, but trying to organize them and trying to, put them in their little boxes and compare them and decide and all that. That's a lot of distraction. That's like
Okay.
it's like channel surfing with Buddhism. You know, it's for your right effort and right attitude. Plop yourself down and investigate it and be present. Really, like it's just a bunch of concepts. It's all a bunch of concepts.
Yeah, for me personally, a lot of my practice has just been staying fully aware of all of my thoughts rather than just sort of ignoring them, like how some people will do. I Nowadays there isn't like a single thought that enters my mind that I'm not aware of to a certain extent. Like that's not to say I repeat every thought I have or I make a note of every thought I have, but I fully weigh my attention to it and give it its due course, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's something that Buddhism promotes as a way of being, but it's been very helpful for me.
Only when there's dukkha. That's what we usually do. We only wake up to it when we're unsatisfied. If everything is going breezy and we're getting nowhere,
Okay.
then we're happy. If
Well,
we're
I can
going
say
nowhere, we're
this.
happy.
I'm a very anxious person, so the dukkha just sort of never goes away. But I've noticed that I can sort of lessen it or cessate part of it to an extent. I mean, honestly, if I could just go sit and be very calm and full of pity and all of those pleasurous sensations, I'd probably be doing that right now,
Well, you can.
But
Just take
that's
a
what I'm
That's
breath.
saying,
right.
and it's very
You
exciting.
can.
It's very exciting news to know that I can. It's just that part of it is not knowing if I trust myself to be able to do it, I guess. Like if I
That's the
sit there where
doubt.
like really
And that's one of the hindrances, right?
That's
Doubt.
the doubt.
Hello, doubt. How are
That's the
you?
doubt.
What's up,
I remember
my
you.
old friend?
I remember you, doubt. And then
From
once,
just meeting you, I'm pretty sure you can do this, and you've done it many times without maybe really understanding it, but you have done it, and you are there. Even right now, you are there. You are seeing it right now in this present moment. It's just making that choice. Am I gonna entertain this, or am I gonna take a breath and get myself relaxed?
But yeah, that really comes back to the integration with everyday life is just whenever you remember. It's not always, but whenever you remember, you can come back to this breath, you can return home to this place of security and satisfaction, and maybe it will drift away again, but then you can remember again. And so it's just developing that skill of remembering this. Yeah. And I think too, when it comes to the sitting, if we're talking about like practicing in seclusion, so getting a time away where you can seclude yourself from perhaps more like distracting phenomena coming in and out, and you can just sit in a quiet place or whatever for some time. That doesn't have to be actually for a long period of time. I think Dhammarato recommends, just like 10-minute sets. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but yeah, just like 10 minutes.
That sounds really short.
Yeah, but multiple times throughout the day. So maybe like 4, yeah. And also when you go to bed. So when you go, because again, the thing is meditating in different postures, right? So the lying posture, you can lie on your side. This is the lion's pose. You can look up pictures of the lion's pose actually, and this can be quite helpful for breathing.
Is that the one where they're like doing this?
Yeah. And so when you go to bed, right, this can be a wonderful time. Like 10 minutes before you go to bed, you're lying there anyway. Just, watch the breath, bring back, have some nice long breaths and just like really relax. Bring in those thoughts of, yeah, I don't need to do anything right now. Everything is okay. There's no place to go, nothing to do. And just really cultivate that satisfaction and that ease and that relaxation right then. Because I mean, that's just it. And it can be very helpful for rest and sleep. And then when you wake up as well, right? Before you get out of bed, you can practice, and just get into a really wonderful state, right? And so it's practicing multiple times a day for like 10 minutes too. Like if you have like a lunch break or something, taking an Anapanasati break there, practice some mindfulness of breathing, right? And that breaks it up so that throughout the day, you'll have these moments where you remember to come back to the breath.
Is there like an Anapanasati sutta?
Yes, there is actually. The Anapanasati Sutta is. I think
Dave,
it's
you're like so
117.
happy he asked you that question. Like, oh yes, finally.
Finally.
I know this answer.
Wait,
I know this one.
it's in the Majjhima Nikāya, 118. Isn't 118 like a holy number or something like that? In India, I'm pretty sure it is.
118 or 108, but
it might be 108, right?
Yeah, but yeah, sorry, yeah, it was 118. 117 is the Great 40. So actually, those are two really good runs to read. The Great 40 goes over like the application of the Noble Eightfold Path or method, and kind of like lays it out with the sati, viewing and effort and all that, and how they run together in circles and bring about right attitude, and that kind of allows the other ones of the speech, the action, the livelihood, and the unification of mind. So this is another thing if you talk to Dhammarato, okay? Concentration is a no-no word. Not to bring up a rule, okay? But unification of mind is how we like to think about it, because concentration can imply almost like this tense, like very strong thing, whereas the mind is unified, the mind is working together, the mind is whole, it's not divided this way or that way. It's like, oh yes, we're watching the breath and being completely satisfied. Yeah.
Is what you're saying like the concentration issue, is that because when somebody concentrates they have a direct intent to apply that concentration to an object, whereas the what you're trying to say when you say concentration is more indirect and general and sort of encompasses all of the phenomena that one's experiencing at once? Or am I off base with that?
No. Concentration is a tense activity, and your goal is to relax, right?
What I was trying to say was like you're just sort of in a meditative absorption that's like aware rather than unaware.
Absorption already means that you're not there because you're being absorbed by a state or experience. What we're talking about is, as you asked the awareness question before, I think that's what I was trying to explain. You can be absorbed in awareness, or you can let it sit by itself, relaxed, not needing to cling to it or tense it up into any object or anything.
Yeah. And so we might use like pay attention to a particular object or even focus, right? But the idea here is that it's not like a strong, concentrated, we need to focus on this very small point on the breath so that we enter psychedelic states, right? This is much more open. This is, we can enjoy the breath, we can enjoy the thoughts, we can enjoy what's here and now, rather than we need to have this focus. And then when the mind wanders a little bit, oh man, I'm not in the thing, I'm all upset because I'm not gonna hit that jhana, I got to sit here in the cave for the next 10 hours.
Well, isn't
now
the whole point of being able to hit the jhana by relaxing the mind rather than intensifying it?
Yeah, precisely. And that's why like unification of mind might be a little bit more of a helpful pointer, because the word is samadhi as well. And so actually I think Dhammarato brought this up, is that a samadhi is almost like I think like the kind of, if you go back to the what the word means, right? It's like the coming together. So if you think of like a teepee, like all the poles like coming together, that's like a samadhi, right? That would be a samadhi, right? So if we're thinking about like the mind, right, unifying, it's all coming sort of together, right? And so in that state, when the mind's together and unified, It's working in union. It isn't being pulled this way or that way. And that could be also, yeah, it's whole. It's not craving. There isn't this craving. There isn't the hindrances. It's just, yeah, we can just enjoy this. I keep coming back to just enjoying like this breath, but I mean, that's really, what it is, right?
I mean, if that's the main point, if that's all that it is, and that's just the key to success, you just never let it go then.
I like
now.
wigwams. I like wigwams instead of TPs.
I was
That's
thinking
my
when you
personal
said
preference.
the spikes or the things all meeting in the center, I thought of that almost like the spokes on the wheel of Dhamma itself.
Yeah. Well, that can be quite seen that way, right? Because it's all these path factors also coming together. The the sati or the mindfulness, the viewing.
I looked
the effort.
into the Anapanasati Sutta, and it basically just said outright that right breathing, if that's a phrase I can use, you're using Anapanasati fulfills all of the 7 factors of enlightenment itself.
Yes.
That sort of blew my mind to an extent. I was like, wait, so I can give up all of the rest of this, just focus on this one thing, and I have the equivalent to the rest of that? Perfect.
Yeah.
That's all I need.
That's right, man.
Because like I don't need to see pretty colors to feel happy, I could be happy in a colorblind world.
Yeah, precisely. It does help because it's not setting up this expectation of you need to see this to have this attainment or whatever. You can come back and just be happy, with this breath. And that's really, what it's about. That phenomena might arise and it might be cool, but, that's just it. It's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I have this thing where I'll meditate before going to sleep sometimes in the lying position, just sort of doing the meditation the best way I know how, where I sort of just stay aware of the mind stream and the breath without analyzing or noting, just sort of chilling, I guess. When that happens, I can get to some pretty deep states, but they're almost like tired states or like sleepy states where I'm still awake in the mind, but the body is sort of going to shut down a little bit. And when that happens, sometimes I'll have like pictures that pop up, which kind of blew my mind because like normally when I think of images, they don't show up in my visual field at all. They're sort of ephemeral or out in the mind space, somewhere above your head, you would say. But with this was almost like a hologram right in front of my vision. Like it showed up. It was just a still image of some old dude. He just sort of sat there and then it just faded away. I was like, wait, am I going crazy? But then I read about it and everything is saying that it's just fine. So
yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of helpful to be able to see this stuff, but also to be able to see, okay, this is like, internal vision or imagination, and being able to see it as that and being able to appreciate it for what it is, but not getting super caught up in it, right?
Right.
But that's kind of the difference, is it's the liking things. Like, it's cool to like stuff. When stuff comes up, you can appreciate it, enjoy it, have a blast with it.
Well, I mean, there's no sustenance in it,
Yeah, precisely. But the thing is like if the problem comes up when there is that craving for it, when there is, and then that leads to the attachment, right? And that's, I need to get this again. I need to have this over and over and over again. And it's not there. Yeah. And it's not really satisfying, right? But when you can come back and just be satisfied with what's going on here and now, that's much more reliable. And what's going on here and now is changing. Now, we do have a very reliable object to come back to, though, with what's going on here and now, and that's the breath. Yeah, and again, I mean, the other thing, too, is the breath is not like also some arbitrary object, too, because it is very much, if you don't breathe, you die, right? Like, it is life. And so that's the other wonderful thing with it. I know a really great thing to do is if you don't enjoy the breath, and Dhammarato will instruct people on this, like, take a couple minutes, don't breathe for a while. That next breath, you're going to really enjoy it. So like that can be helpful sometimes. It's just like taking a pause on the breath and then coming back to it and being like, wow, this is really enjoyable. But I mean, that's part of it too, is actually cultivating that ability to have that, pleasantness, that enjoying, right? Not immediately melting down into upekkha or equanimity, into, the neither, liking or disliking or being unsure of, but rather we can play around with a little bit of this. First, this is where we get our support. This is where we get that security. And then, okay, now we can melt down even more, and then we can investigate and play around. But yeah, just enjoying.
Speaking of playing around with the breath, you guys probably caught that article recently that Joe posted about how many times we typically breathe in a minute. Did you guys happen to maybe not read it, but follow that thread about the amount of times we typically breathe in a minute? So it really got me thinking about that, and it's impossible to count your breaths in a natural state, because as soon as you start counting, you automatically drop them. Like you automatically start breathing slower. So it's really, really hard to do that. But what I did was I started playing, as like you'd like to DJ, I started playing around with a little bit. I found this really cool app that you can get for free, and it's a little breath timer, and it's really cool. It's like a little flower. And so it's they call it a box breath, right? So many seconds the flower opens, you hold, so many seconds you close it, right? And I think, wow, this is a really fun little game that you can play just for about 5 or 10 minutes. And it's a really sweet, especially if you know that you're going to be going into a situation that might trigger you or might cause a little bit of extra anxiety. This little flower, this little breath flower, is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And as soon as I started, I deleted all of the apps on my phone. I'm like, I don't need any more mobile apps. This is my game now. So whenever I have like an urge to play one of those mindless little games, matching or whatever, I just go, oh yeah, I've got my flower game. And so I'll play with that for like 5 minutes. And it's just fantastic. So it's another reminder of how you can play with different techniques or strategies to enjoy the breath. So anyway, it's pretty cool.
That's cool. Yeah,
it's my 2 cents. So, and it all started from that thread that Joe had posted about how many times do we breathe in a minute. So anyway, it's really good.
Yeah, I read a little bit of that. I don't think I read the actual article, but I read what Joe was saying about that in terms of how many times we breathe. And I remember kind of playing around a bit with not necessarily an app, but just with the timer, just to kind of see like and kind of play around like, oh, okay, how long can we make this, right? I mean, the thing is there was part of me though where I noticed myself getting like perhaps a little bit too caught up at times with that, and so I was just like, wait a minute, no, it's just having the breath be comfortable and enjoyable. It doesn't have to be a particular way, but it is fun to play around with it and to actually see and time it. Often with the steps I will do that as well, like when I'm doing walking meditation, kind of like breathe with the steps and have it be very rhythmic, and that go with the mantra and all that. So that can be quite fun. But yeah, definitely, having the timers is interesting. But that sounds like a fun little game for it too.
It is. It's a game. That's what I'm saying. Like it's a really sweet little game. It's the flower opens, you inhale, you wait, and then the flower closes and you exhale. Just again and again and again. So I really like this. And of course it's got little noises and gongs and stuff. I'm like, this is the best game ever.
Yeah, that's fun. Beautiful. Yeah, the box breathing is cool too, because it does emphasize that hold as well, right? So it's like breathing in and then holding for a bit. Yeah.
And in that moment, in this, like you can have a mind moment while you're in the middle transition between the inhale or the exhale. It's like, see what thoughts come in at that moment. It's pretty it's pretty cool. So anyway, that's my
kind of reminds me when I first got into meditation and I went to like one of these meditation classes. At first they instruct you just to breathe and watch your breath and just enjoy the breath, but then the second part is like, hey, start looking at your thoughts. And that part initially like scared me off. I'm like, wait, I was enjoying my breath. Now I have to look at all these shopping lists I created in my head, or all these like anxious thoughts. Why? And from that point, I never returned to any meditation classes, because I was like, wow, this is I get it how people cannot do this. It's very unenjoyable. Just the only part I really enjoyed was the breath. And from then on, I would just like lay in my bed and just breathe. That was my meditation. And I think that is the best meditation. It's just breathing, which we already do. We just don't pay attention to it.
All right, gents, I have to head out. So good to see everybody.
Yeah.
It's good to
Have
see
a
you, Rick.
great one. Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good
Bye.
week. See ya.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
What about you, Robert? Anything to report?
No, life's good.
Nice. That's really good. Anyhow, guys, I'm gonna shoot out as well. It was a pleasure, as always.
Yeah,
Nice
it's
talking to you.
wonderful to see you again, Carl.
Some excellent points. Very nice. Yeah, guys.
Thanks, Carl.